So the big thing going into the midterms seems to be the issue of debt forgiveness that the Democratic Party previously promised and didn't give. But now they've decided that they want to go ahead and do it now that their numbers among youth are starting to slip in favor towards the Republican Party. Well, better late than never, I guess. What they're proposing specifically is $10,000 in federal student loan debt and up to $20,000 for Pell Grants. This would make life significantly easier for those who have been burdened by this debt. Borrowers are eligible for this relief if their individual income is less than $125,000, or $250,000 for married couples. So a good question to ask here is exactly how bad is the student debt situation in the United States? According to a White House press release, many of these students could not complete their degree because of the cost of attendance was too high. About 16% of borrowers are in default, including nearly a third of senior citizens with student debt, which can result in the government garnishing a borrower's wages or lowering their borrower's credit score. The student debt burden also falls disproportionately on black borrowers. 25 years after first enrolling in school, the typical black borrower who started college in 95-96 school year still owed 95% of their original student debt. Now, in 2020, 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Now, much of that was a rejection of the absolute mess that was the Trump administration. But much of it was also for a lot of the benefits they had promised for younger people, like student debt forgiveness, which never actually came. I mean, it was a promise, but it was never delivered. Or maybe it was never really a promise, but it was actually a lie created by a bourgeois politician in order to get themselves into office. Imagine that. A politician lied. It could also be noted that the cost of education in the U.S. has drastically increased since the 1980s. The cost difference between baby boomers and Generation Z is as different as night and day. So, very clearly, there is not just student debt relief needed, but an entire overhaul of the education system. One that made it easier for people to get an education, to get a better job, etc., instead of this kind of wealth gatekeeping that is the current system in place in the United States. So, helping people who really need it. I mean, who would be possibly lined up in order to prevent that? Well, actually, the usual talking heads and conservative politicians that are normally opposed to anything that would help people whatsoever and are entirely opposed to the evils of giving someone a goddamn break. These individuals include Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and PragerU, to only name a few. Now, their complaints are as numerous as they are fallacious, arguing for personal responsibility. Don't take out a loan if you can't pay it. Of course, this really kind of lies on a perfect knowledge fallacy, as if you know exactly what's going to happen in the future. You know exactly how the economy is going to play out. You know exactly how the education system is going to play out, and there could be no possible obstacles that are unforeseen that could show up. So that's kind of a really stupid argument to be made to begin with. Sure, you could take out a loan that you know you could never pay back, but that's not exactly what these students did. People don't take out education loans knowing that they'll never pay it back, because they know what happens when you don't pay back loans. So this kind of inference on students is really fallacious and doesn't really make any sense. But another one of their complaints is that they don't want the public to have to pay for this. Why should I pay for your education? Says the guy who avoids all of his taxes through tax loopholes anyway. And the same guy who was okay with giving $1.9 trillion to the richest, already wealthiest people in the entire country under the Trump administration for losses suffered from COVID to save the economy. So free money to the rich, well, that's okay. We should always do that. And everybody and all of them were lining up for a goddamn handout. But do it for people who are disadvantaged and just trying to live? No, that's a bad thing. The problem with this moral outrage is that these parasites, and I will explain why I'm calling them parasites, are absolute and massive hypocrites, because just about every single one of them took out loans with regards to personal protective equipment during COVID, and then ended up never paying it back and getting that same debt forgiveness that they are trying to prevent anyone else from getting. Marjorie Taylor Greene was forgiven $183,000. The money was probably funneled towards combating the Jewish space laser program. Accused sex trafficker Matt Gaetz owed $482,000 in loans. God only knows what that money went to. Congressman Mike Kelly, who claims to care about blue-collar workers, didn't pay back his almost $1 million in borrowed money. Representative Kevin Hearn, who claimed the IRS was going to invade your home to pay for this debt forgiveness, owes over $1 million. And finally, Congressman Vern Buchanan has almost $2.3 million forgiven. Jesus, that's a lot of money. Why'd you borrow the money if you knew you could never pay it back? Now, this is, of course, not limited to simply right-wing politicians. It also includes the typical talking head right-wing blowhards that we see out in social media. Punchable face man Steven Crowder grifted $71,000 while making a point to use the loans as a way to attack pronouns for some reason. PragerU, the unending bastion of self-righteousness holier-than-thou fake educational institution, owes $705,000. And finally, my absolute favorite, admits he can't pleasure his wife Ben Shapiro, was forgiven more than he borrowed at $21,079. So, I mean, it should be not surprising in any way, shape, or form that these people are monstrous hypocrites and that they are perfectly happy with taking money from the public. But isn't this just really typical of capitalism in general? Capitalists and its biggest talking pieces, they talk about all this personal responsibility. They talk about, the virtue of working on your own, when every one of these people is a Richie Rich who've never worked a goddamn day in their lives. And here they are scrimping for that public money that they say shouldn't even exist to begin with. Particularly funny is the Ayn Rand Institute getting so much money for loan forgiveness for something that they think shouldn't even exist. They have promoted not even existing. They're completely full of it. It is the complete hypocrisy of capitalism. It is the complete ideological hypocrisy of every last one of them. It is astounding, and it is put on display, and yet still they can't even admit it. And even those who support these individuals still can't even admit that this actually is the way it is. And all of this while they defended $1.9 trillion going out to people who were already rich and already had everything they want because COVID scared them. At the same time, many of these people even denied that COVID even existed or that it was even a problem. Yet somehow they felt it necessary to take out loans to deal with a health crisis that they didn't believe exist, or in the case of some of them, was an outright conspiracy. So factor that one in as well. And all of this, every single goddamn complaint that every one of these people has, is nothing more than an argument for free education. Well, why should I have to pay for their education when other people did and they had to go all through that? Because if I suffered, other people have to suffer too, because you're not a narcissist in any way. Or jealous. Okay, you're right. Nobody should have to suffer through paying student debt. Let's just eliminate student debt completely. Why don't we just go ahead and make education free? And then nobody has to suffer, and anybody who can prove that they have the ability to be able to do the courses can get in and be able to do it. Well, that would be the most fair thing possible. I mean, that's what they're okay with, right? They don't mind people who have the ability and they're virtuous and they're great and they're so smart and talented that they'll naturally rise to the top, right? I mean, they wouldn't want to do anything to hinder that, right? Or be hypocritical in any way, shape, or form, and them just being typical Richie Riches. But I think we already know the answer to that one. So all of this situation could be simply avoided altogether if we just made education free. But somehow I don't think in the US that's on the table right now. Nor do I think that it's going to be on the table anytime soon. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.